All right. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's presentation. Thank you to those of you that are here in person as well as those tuning in virtually. My name is Mark Papadakis, and I'm representing a few of the organizations that are working together to bring tonight's event to you. They're all listed at the bottom of the screen. So originally this came to be through a committee that was planning EarthFest. They were looking at doing some ongoing programming. Somebody in particular was a part of that. And we applied for a grant through the Hudson Hospital Foundation for sustainability and wellness programming. So that kicked off some funding options for a variety of speakers, including tonight's presentation. We also have the Office of Sustainability as a partner, Hope for Creation, which is a community organization partnering to advance sustainability, the River Falls Public Library, which is usually our host and we're just off-site tonight. So thank you, Kim, for making the magic happen with the technology. And then the City of River Falls that heard powerful choices. Our next event in the series is From Seed to Plate, You Really Know What You Ate. So this is a panel that will be focusing on local, healthy, pesticide-free food. It will be November 8th at 6:30 p.m. And this one will be back at the River Falls Public Library, although we'll also have the option of tuning in virtually through the River Falls Public Library Facebook and YouTube pages. We are also working on a series that will take place later this winter, February and March in particular. Will be a series on mindful activism with 4 different sessions. We hope that people will register and attend all 4, but there is value if you're not able to attend all 4 as well. And these will all be on the Hope for Creation website. So if you're looking for one central spot to find some of these events and information, it'll be on Hope for Creation's website. The Office of Sustainability also has a film coming up in November called Thirst for Justice, which focuses on water from a few different perspectives. That film is accessible virtually for a week. So the dates are November 10th to the 16th, but then we do have an in-person screening and discussion on November 15th here at 6 p.m. in the North Hall Auditorium. And while it is just a little under 6 months away, EarthFest is coming. EarthFest will be Saturday, April 20th. And that'll be here on campus again in the University Center and possibly on the University Center Mall. So with it being 6 months away, we're still working through a lot of the logistics for that, but mark your calendars for Saturday, April 20th. I also just have a full plug, I guess, for the Office of Sustainability. So UW River Falls is currently in a competition with other higher education institutions in the UW. And it's a competition where people can sign up, Wisconsin residents can sign up for a free energy kit. So you can get some of the options up there, a focus on baths, showers, or comfort. So things like light bulbs, water efficiency, energy efficiency products. And whatever UW institution has the most participation will get $5,000 from Focus on Energy, which is a state organization to promote energy efficiency that you can then apply to a future project. So if you didn't grab it on the way in, on the way out, you got some little half-sheet flyers. But the deadline is October 31st. So if you are interested in some free products and want to help out UW River Falls, please grab one of those and you can sign up online fairly easily. All right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce tonight's panelists. And the plan for this is I'll read one of the bios and then they'll come up and just share some pictures of their experiences and things they want to share. And then we'll do the next bio, pictures, and we'll go from there. And then they'll take a seat at the front. I've got some questions that I'll pose for you. But then if anybody has questions from the audience or virtually, feel free to let us know. You can jump in with questions. And if you don't want to jump in right in the middle, we'll save some time at the end for questions for sure. So, all right, without further ado, I'll introduce our first panelist tonight. Lindsay Barris is an owner-operator at Rising Sun Farm and Orchard, a diversified organic farm right here in River Falls. She has a background in restoration and conservation ecology. She is the vice president of the Pepin Pierce chapter of the Wisconsin Farmers Union, on the board of the River Falls Farmers Market, and is on the board committee of the Whole Earth Grocery Co-op, which is where our snacks are from tonight if you enjoyed any. So Lindsay, I'll hand it over to you.
So I'm just going to share some of these pictures, and I just kind of threw up some pictures that I thought were just really pretty pictures of our farm, and also highlighting a few things that we do. So we raise vegetables, apples, we do maple syrup, we raise pigs, sheep, and chickens. And so this is just one of the pictures of our animals. So all of our animals are pastured. None of them live inside ever. And they get rotationally grazed throughout the farm throughout the year. So this is just one of those pictures of happy animals. And we also grow a huge diversity of vegetables. We grow about 35 different varieties of vegetables. So we do a CSA, we do a farmer's market, we sell wholesale, and we stand at site. And so this is a picture of the CSA box from this past year, just one of them. And so it just kind of demonstrates like the diversity of things that really anyone can grow. You don't have to be. And we do a lot of implementation of sustainable practices for our farm to help prevent erosion on the soil, to promote biodiversity in the soil and in the plants. And this is kind of a representation of the cover crops that we use. So this is alternating clover and buckwheat. This is when I, like a week after I planted the buckwheat, it grew up to my knees a few weeks after that. And it looked really beautiful. So cover crops are just another way that we help feed our soil, cover our land, and promote also beneficial insects to our crops. This is the picture of our orchard. We don't really mow very much, unless we have to. I don't mow until the U pickers come. So we do U pick apples in the fall. And they like to have nice smooth paths. But before that, we don't do any of that because I like having the wildflowers and all of the things that bring the insects to our property. And that box is the home of a thing that we every year. That was seen to show. And here's another demonstration of how we do intercropping with cover crops. These are melons and clover. So this is kind of the way our farm is. It's just green everywhere. There's flowers everywhere. And there's no bare soil basically ever. So that is our method. And here are just some of the things that I represent: the co-op, the farmers union, the farmers market, organic certification. There's my contact if you want to ask me any questions after this.
Thank you, Lindsay. Our next panelist is Tanya Schmidt, who's a yoga therapist and health and wellness coach with Mindful Solutions. She's a board member of Grow2Share nonprofit here in River Falls. In her lifestyle and work, she incorporates natural cycles and focuses on simplicity and authentic connection for whole health.
I'm sure. Is that good? Is it not good? All right, coming in. Okay, now are we okay? So this is just a little bit about me and my work and what I represent. That's me standing on a bench there with some kids out at Grow2Share Gardens here. And I know some of you are very familiar with Grow2Share. And in this case, some kids from Kids Club, the local school district child care program, they come on each summer, and we were getting ready to do snack, and they just harvest the snack themselves. It was just part of some of the really cool stuff that we do at Project, and the kids love it. It's great fun. This is one of my newer passions. Learning foraging and chicken of the woods. If anybody's familiar with chicken of the woods, it's a type of mushroom, and I'm gonna be honest, not the biggest fan of a lot of mushrooms. But chicken of the woods is really good, and you can actually fry it up and fry it like chicken nuggets, and my family loves it. So I just wanted to show this as part of the haul of chicken of the woods that we ordered for this year. And wow, you still have some in the freezer. Nature is a big part of my life and in my work. And it makes you one of my wonderful folks out there now. Yeah, so there's so much you can get just by connecting with a single tree. And that's one of the ways that for myself, try to keep myself sane in this crazy world. And it's just simple things like that. Just to pause and take in the beauty of tree on the side of the street and take a few moments to breathe and be in that moment. And it can make a huge difference. And another newer thing I did not grow up canning, have gotten into canning mostly this year, but learning it gradually over the last few years. And applesauce we've been making homemade for a lot of years now. And this is the first year actually canning it, so I wanted to show you that we did that. And squash, we love squash. And so with a lot of the produce, it's stuff that we try to grow garden, we try to grow share with friends. We share with each other, and it's just trying to be in a space of really healthy, authentic community, and it really without pesticides. And here's a great activity that we just did recently on the 14th out at Grow to Share. We have a harvest party each fall, and we are grinding up and pressing apples with the machine there. And my son is standing there with a ball cap on, helping out, and my daughter is there, crouched down next to the little one, helping out. Those apples that you see in the baskets there, we actually picked from the one tree out at Grow to Share, and we passed an enormous amount of juice and still had apples left over to give away to the folks who came and to give to the food pantry, and it was just a delightful way to do this year. And
Thank you, Tanya. Our next panelist is Peggy Madsen, who is the owner of Beaver Hill Homestead, a medication herb farm and apothecary, and educational venue for nature connection classes for children and adults. She leads a year-round nature club for kids aged 5 to 15, plus several weeks of summer camps, mentoring the art of gardening, herbalism, primitive skills, stewardship, community building, and more.
So this is just a photo of our herbal apothecary. So we have a medicinal herb farm, and we harvest everything, dry it in my living room, and create salves, tincture, tea blends, sumac honey, things like that. So this is our apothecary. This was an open house that we had last fall, and we also have a farm stand down in farm over our driveway. This was I do teach some herbalism classes for adults. So this was, we're making bone broth right here. So it was a class about infusions, tea, bone broth, like how food is medicine, really. And so it's everything having to do with water extraction. So tea is like the water is the medicine this is an adult class that we did last year. This is the Earth Warriors Nature Club that we lead year round now. This is the 5-minute fire game. So these kids, they're given a task we pretend that I have fallen in the icy cold water, and they have 5 minutes to get a fire going to before hypothermia sets in, and then I set the timer, and then they very quickly learn how to work together, find dry materials, get the fire started. So these kids are successfully saving up. This is from a summer camp this year. The little boy is pouring the organic olive oil over the plant medicine. So the kids are making that together. So they learned about 4 different plant medicines, and they each added their plants to the jar, and then we created a salve. We call it cedar salve. It's sort of like an herbal neosporin. So it's an all-purpose salve for like tick bites, bee stings, splinters, scrapes, sunburn, that kind of thing. So they're all working together to create the salve. This is Earth Warriors again. Yeah, I grow a lot of things in the garden. Well, the kids actually planted these seeds, but I grow a lot of things thinking, okay, what do the kids want to eat? What do they want to eat the most? What can they grab, get their hands on, and like have a visceral experience with nature and learn where things are how they grow, you know? So like this past week we harvested all the potatoes that the kids had planted back in the spring. And they were amazed to like undo our potato towers, and they were just more and more and more potatoes. They were just ecstatic. And then we carried them up the hill and we cooked them over the fire pit. So this is the kids taking peas and I don't know, I kind of have a method of gardening. It's called chaos gardening, where I plant all sorts of things together. And like Lindsay, I don't leave any bare soil because that's just an invitation for Mother Nature to grow weeds, which mostly they're medicinal or edible anyways, but I try to fill all the space. So yeah, there's kale in the foreground here, and there's a variety of carrots and all sorts of things in there. This is when my garden was organized very, very briefly in the spring, before the weeds take over. This is, you can see that it's terrace garden, so that's my house in the background. My greenhouse is up on the hill there, a little greenhouse that we built a couple years ago. And our whole place is on a south facing hill. So we utilize the lay of the land to help with like the passive solar heating of our house, and the way that my gardens are dried out and ready for planting before anybody else in the area, because we're in the south facing slope, the sun warms up and melts the snow and it's ready to go. So yeah, it's a very briefly look organized.
Thank you. I love the phrase chaos gardening, because mostly I don't know when I'm gardening when things are planted too close together. Now I can call it chaos gardening and it sounds like there's a madness. So thank you all for sharing those pictures. I think that helps give us some good context of kind of where they're all coming from. Sustainable living can look very different for each of us. So tonight we're going to hear perspectives from these three panelists up here, but that can look very different for you and me, and it can look very different depending on where you live, whether you're in an apartment or a residence hall, or whether or not you have land. There's things like furniture that's available. So I'm excited to just share all different perspectives tonight. Again, I'll start with just some standard questions that we put together in advance, but then we'll open it up later as well for additional questions. So your microphone is on, so you'll need to just pass that back and forth. And the first question is really kind of a kickoff of what made you interested in pursuing a more sustainable lifestyle? What triggered that for each of you?
Go for it. Me?
We're going to order.
Okay. What part is that? This part?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I worked in advertising as a photo stylist for a little more than a decade. So I lived in Minneapolis, and it was a very fun, creative job. My background is in art and just creativity in general. And that job, though, was very it was a like a close-up view of the excess of the world, like, I mean, I was paid to go shopping, to gather up all the things that might work to make something look beautiful, to make someone want to buy it. So I did a lot of freelance work for Target, and it really just sort of ate away at my soul slowly to do that with all of my days. And so I knew that I couldn't do that long term. And eventually I just sort of snapped a little bit. And like I rode my bike down to the bookstore and I bought a few books about like how to work your way around the world, how to like work abroad. And I discovered the WOOFing program, the Worldwide Organic Farmers Association. And I connected with a farm on Kauai, and I emailed them, and they emailed me back in like 10 minutes, and they said, "You sound great. When can you come?" And so I had a little like estate sale in front of my apartment building, and I had a plane ticket like within a month, and I moved to this permaculture farm, which I'd never heard of permaculture before, but I lived on a farm in a tent under a tarp basically for a little bit more than a year, and learned all sorts of amazing things, and just it was like a, what do you call that? It was a crash course in simplifying my life. So yeah. Don't know how to hold it without making it. Yeah.
I had
almost a similar situation. When I was younger, I lived really close to downtown St. Louis. That's where I grew up. And I was raised surrounded by city and consumerism and all that. And when I got old enough to figure out my own way, I wanted the complete opposite. It just didn't feel right to me. And so I wanted to hide in the woods and live in middle of nowhere. I have succeeded in doing that at some point in my life, but I ended up going out to Washington State and going to school for environmental studies and conservation and restoration because I needed to be outside. I grew up being inside all the time with air conditioning and TVs and boxed foods, which is fine if that is what you need to do, but I could not continue doing that for myself. And so I needed to branch out and learn new things. So I did learn a lot about sustainable living through my college and through people that I met. I have ended up living in little cabins in middle of nowhere where like you have to travel like 3 hours to the nearest grocery store, and it was great. But then felt like I needed to come back into the world and share my knowledge and do things my own way and interact with people. You can't hide forever. But I am really struck by the amount of consumerism, and listening to you talk about what you did for work with Target. That is like exactly the epitome to me of what is kind of destroying the environment is our mass amounts of consumerism and how things are just constantly produced all the time for convenience purposes. And so when I decided I didn't want to be a part of that, it was kind of my version of rebellion, which I've always been a rebel in my surroundings. And so I needed something completely different. And I found it in ways, and now I've created my whole life around it. So I grow my own food. I still live in a little tiny log cabin, and I try to do everything that I can do to mitigate what is going on surrounding me. But I'd like to, like, in a way, make like a public service announcement is that it's really hard to live a sustainable life because it's like fighting against what is being put at you. And so it's not our fault necessarily. It's a whole, it's the big picture. It's the want of convenience, the desire for comfort, and also the way that capitalism has built in these systems of making us need to work to get things. We need to work to make money, to buy food, to eat, to survive. It's a requirement in our society. You can't run away from it, but you have to do what you can with your own resources to fight against it.
Thanks for diving right in there, Lindsay. Okay, I'm going to answer the question first. So I don't know exactly the start, but I can tell you I grew up in a poor family, and it was not uncommon that our fridge and our cupboards were essentially bare. And that was hard. And I also always loved nature, to the point where when I was in elementary school, standing at bus stop, I remember another kid littered, and boy, did I let him have it. So I don't know, the spunk, the spark has always been there. And then I was fortunate enough right after graduating from high school to get to work at Carpenter Nature Center in their wildlife rehab program, which, by the way, ceased to exist a long time ago because of the lack of funding. Um, but the experience was amazing to get to literally hands on help heal wounded animals. And it was powerfully humbling that these creatures needed human hands to help them, when in reality they were there because of stuff humans had done. I think I'm going to leave that alone for now, but we will definitely touch more on the things that Lindsay brought up.
Thank you all for sharing those journeys with us. It's interesting the different backgrounds and what brought you to that. And with Lindsay's comments about it's hard, right? Like our society is not necessarily set up to help us be more sustainable. And that can really feel frustrating at times. So just another plug for that mindful activism series that we're going to be doing February and March, because that's going to be designed. We don't want to burn out. We want to keep advocating for change, but we also need to take care of ourselves in that process. So sustainable living, as you heard from a few of them, different things that they got frustrated with, it's getting those blinders off and recognizing that we do need to make some changes. So my next question is hopefully going to be it's going to be a two-part question. One of the first question is, what were some of the first actions you took to be more sustainable? And then the follow-up question is, what are some more recent things that you've done as you've been on this journey? So kind of the beginning, what were some very first things that you did to be more sustainable? And then more recently, maybe more evolved, what have you been able to do? And whoever wants to.
I'll go first if you. All right. Sorry. About 34 years ago, I started bringing my own bag shopping. And I have to tell you, endured a lot of looks from people working in the stores that I was shoplifting and just some general nastiness for a lot of years. And I want to say too that it kind of stinks that it's still not commonplace that we don't need to have bags provided and that plastic bags are the standard. Like, it's kind of seriously pisses me off. And then became a vegetarian about 32 years ago. And 22-ish years ago, when we were living in St. Paul, my husband and I started doing backyard composting. We didn't know what we were doing. We just started doing it because it felt like it was a thing that needed to happen. And then when my daughter was born 19 years ago, I just realized I needed to start making my own food. So I taught myself how to make butternut squash soup and tomato soup and to roast that squash to make pumpkin pie and bake from scratch. And it's just been ongoing things from there. Most recently, my husband Joe, who I don't know if he wants to wave, is sitting right over there. He's I'm going to call out. He built a cold storage in our basement just recently, and it's a big deal. We're starting to do that and starting to can, like I mentioned before, and increasing. And I won't call out, but some of my friends are here that they're kind enough to share space in their garden, and we grow a lot of food together in community. And so doing more of that, and then again, grow to share. So growing all of these good things in community and learning constantly.
What exactly is cold storage? What is that?
Oh, so it's basically a closet, and Heidi could actually speak more to this. In our basement, we just have a regular house in the basement and pulled the insulation off the outside walls so that it purposely stays cooler in there, and close it off and then insulate the part from the rest of the house because we don't want the heat to go in there, so that the food can go in there and stay cooler, so like we can put the squash in there and the onions and the garlic, and it doesn't take refrigeration. I don't know. Do you want to say more?
It's
Okay.
basically a root cellar, like creating a small root cellar. Yes, for cold storage. I mean, that's how, this is like pre-refrigeration, how people kept their food stored for longer without needing refrigeration. So but you described it perfectly. It's like creating a small root cellar just in a normal basement. So yeah.
Do you want to say more? Anybody? What else?
Well, do you want to answer next?
I don't have anything to say about cold storage because I use walk-in coolers that are run off of electricity, which is totally not sustainable. But I can answer the original question a little bit about what my first actions are and the more recent actions have been. So I shifted my perspective was, of course, my first thing that I did to kind of conceptualize like the concept of convenience. And so I started adjusting certain things that I did, like grocery shopping. And when I was 18 years old and I moved away and I went to college and I moved to Olympia, Washington, the first place I went into was the co-op, the food co-op. And I was it was like a dream to me. The place was amazing and I loved it so much that I never went back to a regular grocery store. And I was a very loyal customer of the food co-op. And a cooperative is a business model where there isn't just one person that owns it and is sitting up there making all the money and all the people are working, getting paid minimum wage. It is a cooperatively owned business through membership. And sometimes, if that business is successful, sometimes those members get dividends. So they get paid for the profits that the business is doing. So the model itself was very ideal to me. And the food that was in there was from local producers, local farmers. They had bulk sections. They didn't even have bags. You had to bring your own bags or use the boxes that they had sitting in the corner that the food came in from the trucks. And it was a beautiful place. And so that was my very first thing that I actively started doing was shopping at my food co-op. And now that I live here, I am eternally grateful that there is a food co-op in this town because I don't know where I would be without it. That is where I do 100% of my shopping. And when I talk about changing perspective, our co-op in this town is tiny. It's so small. But if you shift what you feel like you need, it has everything that you need. You don't need 100 options of pasta sauce. Like 4 is good. Just shifting the way you look at what you're buying. And so if for me, if the co-op doesn't have it, I don't need it. And that's kind of how I've always shopped. My more recent sustainability efforts are more involving with my farm business. And so we took over this farm from my father-in-law about 5 years ago. I've been there for 11 years, but 5 years ago, we officially purchased the business from him and started running it ourselves, my husband and I. And we completely changed the way we were farming. We we reconfigured everything. So we stopped tilling our beds. So I don't know if you know about the no-till or low-till process of farming, but you can really easily do this as a small gardener too. So when you till soil, it disrupts a lot of the biology in the soil, and that biology in the soil is feeding your plants. And so if you kill that biology, your plants are getting less available nutrients. And so by not tilling, you're actually helping your plants grow better. And also when you till soil, it actually releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And so by not tilling and keeping that soil intact, we help sequester that carbon into the soil. And so we basically treat our whole entire property as a giant carbon sequestration project. And you can do this in your garden as well. Before I started farming, I was doing I think it's called biodynamic gardening, where you basically do like a kind of a deep little dig, but you're not flipping the soil over. When you flip the soil over, you're bringing those organisms at the bottom and putting them on the top, and they can't survive up there. They need their stratification, all these little micro and macro things in the soil. They can't live in different layers. So when you flip it around, it kills them. So that is how small gardeners can do it. But that is one of the main things that we try to implement on our farm.
Let's see. So, my own childhood was living out near Perch Lake, near my place right now, and it was it was, I didn't realize how connected with the earth we were. My mom has been organic gardening for longer than I've been alive, so more than 47 years. And before it was called organic gardening, and it was just what we did. So she had this huge immaculate garden. She was a teacher, so she had the summers off, and she would can and freeze all sorts of things. So I just sort of grew up with that as I don't know what was normal. And then, so my experience, what I shared when I lived in Minneapolis and worked in advertising, it was in stark contrast to what I had kind of understood as how you treat the earth and how you interact in the world. And so for me, like my initial, I guess I already shared like my very dramatic jump into a more sustainable life, which was selling all of my belongings and moving to living in a tent, which I don't necessarily recommend to people to make such dramatic changes because it is very shocking. It was very uprooting to me. It was very shocking to my system. I mean, it was some of the happiest memories I have, but it was also very lonely and very like discombobulating to suddenly be living on an island in the middle of the Pacific. It was very it was a lot of change really quickly. So when I'm sharing with people about making changes, I generally don't recommend doing that. I recommend like finding something that is like 10% outside your comfort zone, not um why does it do that?
Then people will lower.
Lower. Okay, I'll try that. Um, I made a jump that was like 70% outside of my comfort zone. And it was a difficult adjustment. But I generally tell people you want to just be like a little bit outside your comfort zone. Um, so that was my initial change into a more sustainable life. But recently I'm I'm going to actually say it was getting running water for my daughters and I. We lived off grid for 9 years, and I hauled water. I drove these 6-gallon jugs around to my parents' spigot, filled them up, and carried them up my stairs, and poured them into our water containers. And that was insane, like that was so much work and so humbling. And it was important. It's what we needed to do because we were building this place, and that was the only option at the time. And there came a point when I was assessing my own energy and the sustainability of my own life force. And we needed running water. Like I need to be able to use my life force to grow plants, teach kids classes, be present for what it is I need to do. And not hauling water. And it was just using up too much of my time and energy. Just like providing the basics for the girls. So and I have 3 teenage girls now, so you can imagine like it's important to have a shower now. So we have a shower now, and I feel good about that. So like I think of sustainability holistically, how it's not just about recycling or like these specific check boxes. It's more of like a holistic perspective of how you interact with the world and the natural world. And I feel like I have running water now. I could do so much more with my energy. My classes have like, I don't know, quadrupled, maybe more. What I'm able to provide the community is so much more now. So anyways, it's just a different way of thinking about sustainability. So, okay.
Thank you for that. Growing up, my dad had a lot of rain was the whole water all the time to run all these things. And the first thing we did in our house was get rain. So it's amazing how that changes. And something keeping it nicely, this was not planned. But to talk about backyard composting, with the sustainable speakers series, we actually are looking at, we don't detail yet, but we're looking at doing 2 events on composting. One towards the end of February, which will really focus on industrial composting, looking at maybe how we can get some citywide organics composting available in River Falls. The other event will happen later on in the spring, and we focus specifically on backyard composting. So stay tuned for those additional events coming up as part of this series. people who live in residence halls or apartments, and here in River Falls, we're also installing a lot of multi-family housing units and things. They might not have space to grow their own food. I think all of you at one point or another have talked about growing food. We also know that sometimes healthy and local food is not as affordable as some of the unhealthier options. So what recommendations do you have for people that might live in those types of housing situations and might not have property available?
I'm just going to say one comment about price perception, that it is, though, in general, I think food is too expensive for people. I think people should be able to eat no matter what. But I did some research of my own, and I went into some big grocery stores and looked at their conventional stuff that they get shipped in from California mainly. It was the same price, if not more, than the food at the farmer's market that is in River Falls. Because I know what everyone is selling their stuff for. I'm at the farmer's market, and I was just shocked. I haven't been in a big grocery store in years, so I just didn't really know what people were buying generally for food. But it's just amazing that you can actually get cheaper produce at your local farmer's market and at the co-op. I'm going to just continue to repeat the co-op over and over again because it's just such a great alternative to everything. But as far as like the campus, I was thinking that students need to, well, it would be great if students could talk to their food service and basically ask them to purchase more local stuff. There is a farm to school program. It's federally funded, and the River Falls public school district, they are part of it in a little bit. It's a little limiting, and I don't know what the college system does, but there's programs out there to bring local foods into universities and institutions. There's even a program for farmers to receive grant money so they can still make money off of selling their produce to institutions for a little bit less because they're used to getting it off of the big warehouse trucks. So those programs are out there. You just have to like demand it. But I'm not going to be the only one to talk about this. I'm sure Tanya would like to, because there are community gardens around. So I'll let her speak on that one.
Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, and I'm gonna say at one point Lindsay and I were on the co-op board together too, so absolutely love the co-op too. So Grow to Share, which I've already mentioned, if you're not familiar, and I have a little table over there that it makes a plug for it, and you have the opportunity to perhaps make a donation and get a little book that I wrote. Is it okay to say that too right now, Mark? Okay. So I wrote a little book over there called Backyard Mindfulness for the purpose of just sharing some little nuggets of wellness. It's a very short book because I love to read, you guys. I'm constantly reading. I literally have like a dozen books I'm reading right now. And I can't read them all. I can't keep up. And as wonderful as they all are, I was like, I know plenty of people who want to learn, and whether they're like me or some folks love to learn and reading really isn't their thing. I wanted to keep this as just a tiny little handbook and offer it on behalf of Grow to Share for donations. You can't get it any other way. And so that's what's going on over there. And with Grow to Share, we do have the part where you can rent a plot very cheaply. It only costs $25 to get a first plot, and if you get a second plot, it costs $10 for the growing season. But that's at the heart of Grow to Share. We are as much about growing healthy community as we are about growing that healthy food without pesticides. And you got to see one of the events that we do there. And so I will say this, during the abundance, gardeners all over the place, whether at Grow to Share or somewhere else, a lot of times can't use all the food they grew, whether it's tomatoes or zucchinis or peppers or celery or whatever it is. So if you connect with other people who are growing their food, and Grow to Share is a great way to do that, to show up for a volunteer session, you can connect with the earth, you can connect with other people who care, you can learn how to do this stuff, and you might be able to bring some free produce home with you. And then, as far as what Grow to Share does in addition to the programs, the part of the garden, which is a big portion of it, that is designed to donate food, it goes out into the community. And so often goes to the River Falls Community Food Pantry and to other places. Sometimes, though, the food is still good, but it doesn't look like you would see on the grocery store shelf. And we try to make sure that what we donate looks the same as what you would get in a grocery store. Well, if you show up to volunteer and there's something that doesn't look pretty, you might get to take some of that food home, and you can get used to the fact that food doesn't always look as pretty as you think it might, and it doesn't change the nutrition level. So I'm going to stop plugging that, but that's a great way to help yourself out then, and build healthy community wherever you live. So come.
Let's see. Yes, I will just add to that a little bit by saying that, yeah, the community is such a big piece of that. There are ways to reach out and join, like a buying co-op, or join a CSA together with a few people. If like one CSA box is too much for a single person or a couple, you can go together on that kind of thing. You could volunteer at some local farms one day a week or even a couple times a month, and take home some vegetables that way, perhaps. You could, I mean, if you're living in a small space, it is still amazing what you can grow in a container garden. The I don't know, I was all about the lasagna gardening and the square foot gardening, where you can pack in a ton of food in a very small space. So even just on like a little balcony. Um, but yeah, I do think the community is the best way to do that, to reach out to other people, connect with other people who are interested, and then kind of join forces together. Whether you have a garden plot where you take turns weeding and harvesting, or a buying co-op, that kind of thing. There's a lot of options.
Thank you. A few follow-up points on that. For students in the room, there's currently a survey available to provide feedback on Chartwells, which is our guidance service provider. So if you would like more healthy or local options and things, you have the opportunity to advocate for that. And if you don't know where to find that survey, you can email me at sustainably@uwrf.edu, and I will make sure you get that. Also, we will have a representative from Chartwells at our next event on November 8th, focusing on that local healthy and pesticide-free food. So that'll be another good opportunity to engage directly with Chartwells and maybe ask some questions of their practices. Tommy mentioned Grow to Share, and mentioned that it was $35 for 2 plots. So my family's had 2 plots there the last 2 years. $35 is super affordable. If we did that at our house, we would easily pay that much of our water bill in 1 month. So it's really a great asset in our community to have Grow to Share. So thank you. The next question is, could you share some things that you have done to reduce either your overall waste, your water usage, your energy use, or other things that you feel you've done to reduce your interest on things?
Go first. Sure. Well, like I said, I did kind of the dramatic thing where we lived off grid for 9 years, and that it forced us to live really simply. So we, like I said, we hauled water. So every single drop was very precious. We were very careful about every drop. So like, for instance, I really went several years without cooking pasta because you just throw that water out, so I would make rice instead because the water gets absorbed, very simple things about the way you change how you live. And for energy use, we didn't have any electricity initially, and then we got a couple small solar panels, and then we do have 4 bigger panels now, but that it became a now I am on the grid. In order to get a well to have running water, I did need to connect to the grid to have enough juice basically for a 180-foot deep well. I had 2 choices. So I could either pay $3,000 to go on the grid, or I could invest about $20,000 in my solar panel system and stay off grid. So to me, a financially sustainable option was I had to go on the grid. But we still don't have a ton of appliances anymore because I'm just used to like, frying my toast in a casty, we don't have a toaster, so like little things like that. You realize how much electrical draw things take, anything that creates heat. So like a toaster, a curling iron, a hair dryer, those things are the biggest draw because they're taking the energy, from the sun that's in the coal that then gets burned and then creating heat again. It's so you find a workaround when you're living off grid, you're just forced to. So anyways, I do have a few appliances now, but
I actually had a similar situation in my life before 5 years ago when I moved into an actual house. I lived in a 12 by 15 cabin with no running water. We did have electricity though. But we had to haul out all of our water down the hill on sleds. Actually, winter was the best time to haul water because you can use a sled and you didn't have to carry it. But we lived in that little shack for 6 years, and it really does open your eyes up to how much water that you're using on a daily basis because you don't want to carry it. But then when we moved into our house and we actually had a shower, it's like a dream. And I still get kind of teary eyed thinking about having water. Um, but so I also have had that perspective of having very little space, not having a lot of electronic stuff in our house, and we still don't really because our house is still very small. We have no counter space, so we don't have any of the kitchen appliances that make things convenient. So we do all of the stuff by hand, which is totally fine. Once you're used to it, it's not a big deal. Um, and another thing that I try to really keep in mind, though, in my personal life when it comes to reducing waste and reducing water and reducing energy is the stuff. I try to limit the amount of packaged stuff I have. The processed foods that come in packages, the things that you buy online that come in packages that have to be delivered to you, like all the things that come in those packages, I've realized I don't actually need these things. And so I try to limit the amount of packaging that comes into my life, the plastics especially. And we also have some solar panels that we have purchased through incentive programs and grants, and that has really offset our costs, though we do have 2 walk-in coolers and 4 chest freezers and various buildings with various people in the houses. So we go through a lot of electricity at my place. And so the amount of solar we have is kind of giving us a little bit of a discount, but it's definitely not covering everything. And we also recently purchased this tiny little electric car for super, super cheap. They're out there.
Nice.
And it was like so cheap that we had to do it. And we can only go to Hudson and back. That's as far as we can go. And even then, sometimes I'm a little worried. If it's not fully charged, I'm not going to go to Hudson. But 80% of my driving is to River Falls. I live 10 minutes out of town. So I go to River Falls, I go to the co-op, and then I go home, and I go to the co-op, and then I go home. And so the fact that we now have this electric car and we can plug it into the same system where our solar panels, it feels very special. But it needs to be more accessible to people, those electric cars and the solar panels and all of those things that we can start bringing the more alternative energies into normal households and to make it more affordable by voting for such things.
Hear you. So agreeing with all of that and then adding when we shop, most of the time if we don't have to buy new, we don't buy new, we thrift. We're really fortunate to have some great thrift shops right here in River Falls. And walking and riding bike as much as possible. Our family lives right in town. I walked here. Kim here from the River Falls Public Library as much as I can. I walk or ride my bike to the library. If I don't need to drive, I'm not going to. And not only because it saves energy and it's better for the earth, but it's better for me. Feels so much better when I walk. It's an investment in my physical health, my emotional health, or ride bike, my mental health. And then, especially being in a small community, oftentimes I might bump into somebody along the way, and then I get some great social connections too. And then hand-me-downs, like, so like I said, I'm short, right? So I sometimes get clothes from other people's kids who outgrew them, and I'm totally cool with that, you guys. The shoes I'm wearing were hand-me-downs from someone I work with, and like the just trying to flip the perception out there, because definitely kind of what an aspect of what Heidi was alluding to before. There's in our culture, there's like this like a culture of like, how much did you spend on something, and like it's better if you spent more, right? And I'll be like, got it for free, got it on the corner. Paid 50 cents when it was on sale at Treasures. And we need to build culture around that and donate to the stores. And we do that all the time too. And there's so many more things. And we just together with voting and more, just we need to create that collective momentum to flip the culture. It doesn't have to be toxic stuff. We can start going like, oh yeah, check this out, got it for free, or it cost me $2, and it was at a thrift store. Or my Halloween stuff I get on clearance at the stores after Halloween, and then I wear it for 10 or 20 years. Yeah. All right.
Okay, just well, what are some of the challenges and think we as a society can overcome some of those challenges?
I'll go first. Okay, so we started talking about some of this before. In our society, there are a lot of government subsidies for things like petroleum and for growing corn and soy in order to feed animals at CAFOs, corporate animal feeding operations. And those are incredibly low price because of these subsidies. And then and Lindsay pointed out that a lot of organic food actually isn't as expensive as the perception is. At the same time, there definitely are times where there's a price difference. Well, if we could get rid of those subsidies, and how do we do that? We do that by voting. We put that pressure on at local level and higher, just keep it going. And if we can get rid of those subsidies, that's going to help level the playing field. It's going to help so that we will focus more on local food. That food isn't going to be traveling nearly as far. It's going to help the local farmers. It's going to help more local businesses. It's going to help us be healthier, and it's going to help us not put our travel energy into things that are petroleum based. We'll do less of it. We will be physically, mentally, emotionally, socially healthier for it. It's part of building that momentum to flip society.
And to just kind of continuing on that thought is at least in the realm of agriculture. So we do have confined animal feeding operations in Pierce County. I know more about Pierce County than any other county around here. And there are not very many regulations to control those things. And there's actually one that is going from, I think, 2,000 cows up to 6,000 cows in our county. And there has been a petition to have a moratorium on that to kind of stop the movement, which actually didn't pass, and the movement is continuing. But there are things that are happening locally that people are involved in. And if you have a strong feeling that this is not something that we should be promoting, then we do need to talk to our lawmakers and the people in government that are making these rules and give them alternatives. And so I'm going to plug the Wisconsin Farmers Union a little bit, because that is exactly what they do. Their whole purpose is to help communities thrive, for rural communities. So it's not just for farmers. It's called the Farmers Union, but it's for everyone that lives in a rural community. And it's to maintain the local businesses, the healthy food, and the environment. It is a huge aspect of what they do. And they actually have lobbyists. That's how laws happen, is that you got to send a lobbyist, and the big corporations that have a lot of money, they've got 100 of them going into Washington and helping make these laws happen. And so when organizations like the Farmers Union, they have like two, because that's all they can afford. But the more people support them, the more it can happen. And so voting with your ballot and voting with your dollar is, to me, the most important thing anyone can do. Whether or not you recycle or go to the thrift store, if you just vote and express your desires to have healthy communities and a healthy environment, that is one of the most important things you could possibly do.
So I think the main barrier on a personal level and the collective level is that there's sort of the option of comfort versus connection. And we often choose comfort and we don't realize the cost of that comfort over time. Like, for example, I'm trying to think of a good example here. There's 1,000 examples from the past like 10 years of my life as we've been building my place. The 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 ease, for instance, of having a machine help do the work. So my dad happens to have a bobcat, and they live up over on the other side of the pasture. So I have this machine available sometimes, if it's available, to help me with a task. So somebody, we had a group of permaculture students come and help build some of those terraced garden beds that you saw the picture of. And they were helping carry the materials up the hill with wheelbarrows, and we were all talking and laughing and learning from each other, and had this beautiful day together. And one of them commented on, well, why don't you just have the bobcat do this work? And I was like, well, the bobcat is diesel fuel and it's really loud, so we wouldn't have been able to have this connective conversation. This is a very simple example, right? We wouldn't have been able to have that conversation. We couldn't have had the same experience. It would have been like, okay, we're all watching the bobcat do the work, and then wave goodbye to everybody. Where instead we had it was maybe, we all worked a little bit harder wheelbarrowing up the materials up the hill, but everyone left giving hugs to each other and thanking each other and having this real like deeper connection as a community with each other and with the land. And in fact, I think that was the time that they even like unearthed a nest of baby rabbits, and so they were all working together to carefully move them safely. You know what I mean? That this whole experience happened if we had the bobcat helping us, which would have been a much easier, like a 2-minute task. It just would have totally changed the experience of that. So there's 100 choices like that are available to all of us on a personal level. And like you say, to walk, the beauty of that's like, in permaculture, there's a concept called, like stacked functions, where one thing that you're doing serves many, many purposes. So like being able to walk to town, you're saving money on the fuel, you're healthy, it's good for your mental health. Maybe it's good for your neighbors because they can wave to you. You can't quantify what happens when you're making those different choices. It's not necessarily like financially quantifiable, or even like in the terms of like strict sustainability, but connection is such a broad, beautiful thing that serves the whole community and everyone on a personal level.
All right, more questions? You can do questions or comments, and Kim and I will flag those and students were involved. And we'll also open up to those of you that are here in person if you have a question. So Heidi really just touched on my last question, but I want to just open it up to the others as well. What are some of the benefits that you've reaped from sustainable living and those choices that you've made? So Heidi just gave several of them, but is there anything else that you wanted to add before we open it up for a broader Q&A? Yeah.
I can talk a little bit about at least what I see on my farm. So I've been out to a lot of different farms, big, small, monoculture, corn, soy, dairy, all sorts of farms. And it really, there's a huge difference when you walk onto a diversified farm, whether it's diversified in crops or diversified in pasture. The whole environment is completely different. And that's what I see when I'm at my place. So we have an immense amount of birds. We have butterflies, we have bugs, we have insects all over the place. So like you cannot go a day without seeing 100 different things living around us. And that's the sort of thing that's why we're doing it. We're trying to promote our environment. We're not trying to fight against it and control it and make the land do exactly what we want it to do. Sometimes we will lose a crop because the deer will come and eat it. But it's like that, what are you going to do about that? So we try to work around it. We make sure we have enough crops that the deer aren't going to eat. So we're going to still be able to sell stuff. But at the same time, it's like all of nature is living there. And so all of nature should be able to benefit from what we're doing. And whether that be a farm on 20 acres like ours or a backyard, like you can practice those things. Like we don't really mow the grass. We don't blow our leaves into a pile and we let the flowers bloom. We love dandelions. Like keep the dandelions in your yard. There are a lot of things you can do on a small scale that will bring those insects and those butterflies and those birds and maybe even those deer, even if you don't like them, but you can work around it.
My mind is in a lot of places. We'll see what comes out right now. I think a big part of this is that I'm going to frame it in terms of wellness. And in my work in wellness, remember we need to do the work, right? So bringing it back to capitalism, the rampant capitalism, and that we all end up being reduced to how much we spend and how much we earn. And that's not real. But if we're really well, we are measuring the work that we do. No, like Heidi talked about making a decision to get running water because she made an authentic choice about how she was going to spend her energy. That makes sense. Our society is framed again that we are either valued by how much we spend or how much we earn or both. And that is wholly unhealthy and sets us up for disease. And then on top of that, we need to be sold things to get all those nasty microbes that we get from touching the soil off of our hands, which then means we get them out of our systems, which we need for health, which means we're going to wind up needing a bunch of prescriptions, which why are they selling them to us? In order to make us healthy? No, to make more money off of us, which leads us down the path of getting ever more increasingly sick. And I'm not exaggerating any of this. You guys know this is true. So when we do the work according to what makes sense for us, when we work our muscles work better. When we work our minds work better. When we work our immune systems and our digestive systems, they work better. And when we do these things in authentic human connection, it all is synergized for wellness. I think that's just where I'm going to stop.
All right, any questions from the audience?
I have one related to cover crops. So in my small garden, I don't have the big space that you do, but I have a gardener with lots of different vegetables. If I could plant something between like my tomatoes and my carrots, that'd be the idea to keep, I really don't care for weeds, so I'd rather have a cover crop. So that's something that then just dies away in the fall, and then you plant something else there the next year. How does that work for you?
It depends on what you plant. There are some things that will winter kill, and then there's some things that won't. So if you wanted to have what they call a growing path permanently, you would want to choose something that doesn't winter kill, like white clover. I went crazy with the white clover this year, and I'm going to be planting into it as my ground cover in my beds. So my next year's broccolis are going to be planted in my white clover that I planted this year. But there's a lot of things you can plant that if you don't want it to stay, like the buckwheat is a fast growing thing that can grow really tall, and then you can push it over and then that will cover the ground, and it actually helps create kind of a mat to keep weeds from growing as well. So it kind of depends on what exactly you want, but there's options.
So do you do the same thing in your flowers? Your flower areas?
I don't grow many flowers, but I usually, if I do plant flowers, I mulch with straw. I do a lot of mulching with straw solely. I did some mulching with some wood chips just because we got a free pile of wood chips and I needed to use them for something. But straw is kind of our main mulching method. So I don't use cover crops for mulch everywhere. It is a lot of straw as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes.
I don't have a question, but I do want to have a comment. So the comment first is I'm super impressed. You folks describe your experiences eloquently, and of course, the definition of eloquence is an expression of lived experience. And so you come across very, very well. I've been a professor at the University of St. Thomas for many years. I retired a little while ago. And I'm also one that has been with sustainability for many, many years. So to come across people like you actually doing things and making it work is extremely inspirational. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. It is very inspirational. I love all the talk about growing community, growing healthy food. In our community, I'm wondering if there are any ideas about ways to come together in community to cook that food in a healthy, cost-effective way. Something that exists or something you would like to see.
Yeah, so it's a dream with Grow to Share to get to the point where we have facilities. And thank you for asking that question. And with those facilities, then it to learn like from Heidi's model and from Lindsay's model too, to be able to implement solar panels. Like we don't have solar panels at our house because we can't afford it yet. But if we could do this at Grow to Share, we don't. So if you've not been there, we don't even have a picnic shelter. Okay, so when I say we don't have facilities, we really don't have facilities. But to deliberately plan facilities there, like modeling off of what these two are talking about, so then we could have solar panels. I would love to have an honest to goodness composting toilet, or at least rainwater flush toilets. And then we could have a kitchen in there, and we already do programming, but it's limited to what we can actually do in the garden. And then I just recently submitted a grant, not big enough to go for facilities yet, but if anybody wants to work with me on that one, come on up, I'm there. But to get some materials like a solar cooker and a solar panel table, and then other materials, and to get our own apple press, and then we could use these things for more programming, and we could have them available to rent for reasonable fees, so then it can get out in the community. We could do just keep expanding the good, and eventually we could do the same thing with facilities, so that people can learn how to do a lot of these things together. And if you already know what you're doing and you're incredible at it, come be an instructor. Come share your knowledge. We need more community built around this stuff. We don't need to keep expanding the communities around bar culture, right? I mean, there's so much more we can do, and more than I'm saying too.
I think it is really important to gather, whether you're cooking or bringing food or something. But if you gather with people, then that's where the ideas come from. And things can't happen without the ideas. And when we gather with our ideas, then we can actually start having some action together. So bringing community together in any way you can, even if it's just a book club or a walk down the road, just talking to people and engaging with your community is the great way to do it. And also the community ed through the public school district, it is a fantastic way to gather, but they also have those cooking classes, and the co-op also does the cooking classes through community ed as well. There's those things that are already established in our community that if you just find it, you can be a part of it. Miller is the deli person at our co-op, and he just did a workshop on making tiramisu, which unfortunately I missed, but it's like the best thing in the whole entire world, and I can't believe I missed learning how to make that. But things like that, they're here.
Okay, so for making the food together, I have an idea. There's no reason that all of you here couldn't host a stone soup party at your place. So we when my girls were little, so I homeschooled my girls. The two oldest are in high school right now, but we homeschooled all along. And when we initially moved here, we didn't have community. And so I kind of put out an email to ask, like, are there any homeschool families that want to start meeting? And I got like 45 replies. So we hosted an open house at our place, and this group of people that were strangers that day, they are now some of my closest friends. And one of the very first things we did as a group at my place I think we might have been living in the bus at that point. Like we didn't have a structure. We met up the hill around, like we dug a hole to make a fire pit, and I hosted a stone soup party. And we really, like at the time, I didn't really have much, but I provided the pot and the stones and like potatoes or something. And I mean, truly, the beauty of we host it every year still with the families, and it's such a moving experience, for the kids to all be like chopping their carrots or the mushroom, whatever it is that they bring. And I think there were some people initially that are like, but I need to know what everybody's bringing so that we don't all have carrots. And it's like, you just have no idea what magic will show up because people bring whatever they bring, and it tastes amazing. So like all these kids were eating this, they normally would never have eaten soup at home, and they love eating stone soup together. So it's I don't know, there's just some magic to that to be able to share together.
All right, any other questions? It's
this spot. And I think that education is so important when it comes to helping people understand the food that's available at the co-op and what to do with it. Because when you're dealing with people that have always eaten another way, it's intimidating for them. And the price does come into effect, not because I think it's way more expensive, because I cost compare, and I think the co-op does an excellent job of trying to keep things very fair. But when people are thinking of buying things, when something is a little more, when they don't understand it, then they're reluctant because they're like, I'm surprised at when I buy things at my lunch and bring them back. Some of the weird questions my coworkers ask me, you're like, really? You know, but it's just the reality of it. And I think the more we educate people on it, the more we're gonna get people into understanding why to shop there and to go there.
Yeah, definitely. Love that. I mean, I think of the work that all of us are doing. I mean, obviously you all are doing it as well because you're sitting here tonight. So like the work that we're all doing is um, on a personal level, we're making our own choices, baby steps, making our own choices. And I think of myself like, where do I position myself on the bridge to like be able to, like you say, turn and educate a little bit, reach back, like you were saying, we can all like escape off to a cave and live alone in the woods. And in some ways we might be happy on some level, but like for me, it just, like you said, it's very important. It just felt important to be a part of the community and try to do my work in the world and connect with people. And so I think it's important for me to position myself somewhere along the bridge that is relatable enough so that people can understand, like, oh, it's not intimidating. Oh, I could make this small change. And like to me, like sustainability is not a it's not an achievement. It's not like a goal necessarily. It's not like a pinpointed place on the spectrum. It's more of like a context of understanding, like, am I living in right relations for myself and my own path? Like, who am I? Who am I along the long line of ancestors and all the generations before me? Am I living in right relations to do good work in the world? Like I'm trying to create a life that I'm probably not going to enjoy the benefits of, really. I'm hoping that the kids, you know, that the kids that I'm teaching, they'll get to live that life. So we just have to just do our best, whatever that is in the moment.
Thank you, Diane, for that comment too about how hard it can be to get started, and thinking again to the kinds of programming in our society, because the marketing is out there that like to make your own butternut squash soup. Why on earth would I do that? Like, first of all, why would I even eat squash soup when I can get a bunch of cheap frozen pizzas or whatever, right? But if I did, why wouldn't I buy the stuff that comes in a package that it very likely is going to wind up in a landfill because we have limited recycling, and a lot of them come in those boxes that aren't recycled in our area, or whatever the thing is. And even that's better than not eating it. So I mean, one, it's a sea of choices, and it is confusing. And two, one thing I would love to see shift is so many of us to be able to step back and really see the cost of what a new term I just learned. So I went to another presentation that was here at UWRF just recently. Marian Nessel was here, and she's an amazing author that I did not know before. She's written a ton of books, including Food Politics and like a revised version of Food Politics, and Unsavory Truth, and I'm not going to remember them all. And their tomes, I don't know that I'm going to slog through them all, but I'm grateful for her. And she calls out a lot of this stuff. And she brought in the term ultra processed foods. And if we can look at this from a wellness standpoint, if you can't make it in your kitchen because it has a bunch of ingredients that aren't accessible to you, or require machines that we don't have in our kitchens, then it's an ultra processed food and it's not good for us. It doesn't mean it's not common. And just because something's common doesn't make it normal or healthy. And if we can stand back and think, well, what really is the cost of this ultra processed food? And I don't need to go through it all again, but there is a huge toll in our bodies, and there is a huge toll in how our brains function. There is a huge toll in our emotional and mental well-being. And if we could start a movement that is big enough for more of us to pause before we make that cheap purchase, that could be amazing in shifting what ends up on the shelves and how we live our lives, not just how long we live, but the quality of how we are able to live.
Another good way to kind of bridge that gap of what to do with either the food that you are purchasing or how to get started, you can talk to your farmers. And that is actually a very accessible thing that you can do because of farmers markets and the amount of farms that are in our area. We're surrounded by farms. And farmers love to talk about what they do. And so you can approach one of them at your local market and just ask them, what do I do with this eggplant? And they will tell you 10 things you can do with that eggplant. It's all about communication and making that connection with your community, with the people that are growing the food, and with the people that have the experience also.
Thank you. That sound on here is custodian coming through too, ready. So I saw William stand up for the final question, and then after that, we just have some closing remarks.
Expand your outside your comfort level in cooking and using things there to make it more sustainable and also just things like soap making and a lot of things like this. What the community has is on the library.
Thank you for that. Lauren Kaminsky, who works in the River Falls School District and Community Ed Office, is walking virtually and put a similar comment in there as well. If anybody's interested, there are several sustainably focused offerings each kind of program or each kind of season that they do. And also, if anybody's interested in teaching a course, there's something that you feel passionate about and knowledgeable about, they're always looking for people to lead different community ed courses as well. So I did see your hand up. Did you have something to add?
And so when we go there, remember that they do have organic foods. I've noticed that they have baskets of organic, which bothers me because I want that bag over. And also they have local. So if your neighbors in the shop, if you have, I would there, I use a lot of it. And so I what it is to get in there because the cost, that's just, I just, oh, people buy a bag. I hope. No, that's savings.
And that is very true because in those larger grocery stores, the produce managers who buy the produce, they usually get a list from the distribution warehouse and they put in what they want and then it comes in a big truck. And working with individual farmers is hard for them. It's inconvenient and it could be uncomfortable, but if people are demanding it, then they are more pressured to get out of their comfort zone and start discussing things with the local community. We used to sell it at Dick's, but it became too hard for the produce managers. And so we had to step back, but it can happen again if there is the demand. That's what voting with your dollar is and communicating with your community. Thank you.
All right. Just have to close the comments. So I started earlier by saying that same living is a journey that different for each of us. So hopefully there's someone being here tonight. Maybe there are things that you will know will never be part of your future, but maybe there are several ideas that you did have. So there's a lot of small things that we can do as well. Hopefully you have some takeaways. I want to thank Kim and the library for making sure all the technology works tonight and making it available virtually as well. The recording of the presentation will be available after tonight as well. So people that maybe weren't able to make it here tonight, you can let them know they can watch it virtually down the road. And then I would like to thank our panelists, of course, and all of you for coming. So big round of applause for everyone. With that, we will end it. Yes, there are some snacks out there in the hallway from the co-op. So now that we've heard so much about our amazing co-op, if you haven't experienced that before, maybe you need to take a little snack on your way. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
All right.